What's up, everybody? It's Green Living Guy here, Seth Leitman, the Green Living Guy, with my favorite co-host, the Foxy Jay and Hannah. What's up? So we're here today. It's a lovely day in the neighborhood, getting a little bit more warm. And, we're getting a little bit more light every day. A little bit more light is better than the darkness that we witness in many ways, right? So we have a great guest here that is a friend of the IDF. Big up! Check my shirt. I don't play. I come bringing the heat. So we got the friend of the IDF, Mikey Micholav, and it's just a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So before we get into the IDF stuff, just tell me a little bit about your regular work. You work for Commune Capital. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so outside of all the Israel activism, I actually own a private equity real estate firm called Commune Capital. We primarily focus on the development of kind of large-scale self-storage properties across the United States and kind of mid-size multifamily properties between 25 to 100 units on the apartment building side, and usually about 1,100 to 1,700 units on the storage side. And we have a pretty decent following on social media with a lot of our financial education through Commune Capital. And so we bring investors in that can't otherwise access this type of real estate, and we bring them in as our partners on our deals.
Fantastic.
Great.
So you're making real estate deals happen.
So you're based in California, but you do travel a lot?
Yeah, so I try as much as I can not to travel that much anymore. But yeah, whenever we have a deal, primarily in storage, because storage we do across the nation. So whenever we have a storage deal somewhere, I usually will go before we finally make the close on the property. And then I generally don't go back that often afterwards. Most of our apartment buildings are all in Southern California. So they're all within a 2-hour drive of where we are. So that's a little bit more convenient. And then, when it comes to the pro-Israel advocacy, whenever I have to make those trips, I make those trips as necessary.
When did you get involved? How did you get involved in advocacy and Friends of the IDF?
Yeah, good question. So my parents are Israeli. I was born in the U.S. I grew up in the U.S., although I didn't speak a word of English until I went to school. So when I speak Hebrew, I sound like an Israeli. When I speak English, I don't think I have an accent, although I haven't ever been told otherwise.
No, I'm not going to say you got an accent, bro.
So I grew up with a degree of Israeliness. Now, it didn't really take hold. Kind of came into a group of other Israelis. I became a part of. There's something called Sofim here in LA. That's basically the Israeli Scouts, and that's where really Zionism began to take form and instill itself in my kind of day-to-day values. And that's when I really started to see a lot of the anti-Israel and anti-Jewish sentiment kind of brew up, which is interesting because every time I come across it, all that's done is it's strengthened and deepened my pro-Israel roots even further, because that existential threat has reinforced the need to be even more of an unapologetic Zionist, kind of full stop and across the board. And so that's where that kind of came into form. And then probably in like my 20s, I started getting involved in the community. I started sitting on different boards of organizations, becoming an activist in kind of what was happening on the ground. Every time a war broke out in Israel, speaking up on behalf of our country to make sure that people understood exactly what was happening and not falling victim to all of the noise and the matrix that we were living in through whatever the media was feeding us, but in fact showing them what the truth was. And then that kind of ultimately at some point, I don't even know how long ago it was at this point, led me to being on the board of an organization called Friends of the IDF, where we advocate for our soldiers in Israel and provide them a lot of humanitarian support, non-military stuff. And we've, raised, I want to say, probably $400 million in the last 5 years alone for the benefit of our soldiers, to ensure that they're doing their job by protecting Jews in Israel and Jews across the world. It's our responsibility to protect them. And then I'm also the chairman of California for an organization called the Israeli Civic Action Network. And what we do there is a lot of the pro-Israel lobbying efforts in the local, state, and federal government, as well as kind of some of our recent efforts in the school districts to start redirecting the curriculum of the education system and what's happening out there away from all the anti-Israel stuff and start getting them to adopt, broader definitions of anti-Semitism to protect our Jewish students.
Amazing. Is it
after October 7th? What? I mean, I know that you've been defending Israel for a while. I have been a Zionist most of my life. Went to a Zionist camp as a kid, and I jokingly say to people that Zionist camp is not like Gaza camp by a mile. We learn about light and love and prayer and getting to know each other versus how to carry a gun and how to crawl under a rock. So, how long? Your parents were Israeli, I get that, and my wife's parents are Israeli too. Well, half they are, and so we volunteered for Sorel back in the 90s. In '93, we volunteered on an intelligence base, and it was a lot of fun, and I'll never forget it. One of the better experiences I've ever had. But throughout my life, I've realized that I don't know. I guess the simple way of putting it is when I read a prayer and I say Yisrael, I get the memo that we're interconnected directly with Israel and Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. There's misinformation. In war, you'll have misinformation, but let's get back to basics. Sometimes I've said to people in New York, didn't you go to Sunday school? Didn't you read a Bible? Don't you know the chronology? If you don't want to say, history, don't you know the timeline? I mean, we were there first. The Christians came second, and then Islam came third. And the whole reason of Mecca and Medina was because Muhammad got mad after he went to Medina. So, there's a lot of just common basic understanding of religion, ethnicity, and tradition, as well as just them forgetting their own Sunday school. I think, as they've gotten radicalized and taken to the streets, especially these young liberal people thinking they're supporting something like Vietnam War kind of thing, you got hoodwinked, folks. You're supporting a terrorist organization. So, I mean,
right.
What are your thoughts on all of that? What are your thoughts on how, especially after Kanye and now October 7th, where have things gone? What's wrong with the PR game?
Yeah, it's funny because I was at an event last night and the speaker at the event said, we have the most incredible story and we have the worst narrative possible out there. We just don't know how to articulate the story in a way that resonates with people. And it's interesting because you're almost fighting against an opposition that is constantly shifting the goalposts of the argument in order to try to support their narrative that you are somehow bad and evil in this equation, and they are somehow the arbiters of truth and the oppressed. And it really kind of comes down to that oppressed oppressor, delineation that we're seeing, rise up so much, especially on the college campuses. And the reality is, when the conversation gets to, who's the rightful owner of the land, there's just no argument there, right? If you look at it from the biblical standpoint.
Hang on one second. I hate to bring this up. Hannah, could you mute up? Because I'm hearing your sound while I'm talking.
Oh, sorry.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mickey. You were saying?
Yeah, if you look at the biblical side of the argument, right, it's what God told Abraham, go to this land that I will give you. And if you say, okay, well, I don't believe in the Bible and the Old Testament, okay, fair enough. Well, we don't have to go to the Old Testament to show that the Jewish roots exist in the land of Israel, right? Judea, which was conquered by the Romans in 132 CE, which, by the way, is 500 years before the birth of Islam, is where the land of the Jewish people were. And that's where all of our roots are. So the constant argument of, oh, well, European colonialism, if you do a DNA test, your roots are going to be in, some part of Europe. It's not true. I personally, I have 12 generations in Israel, and before that, Spain, and before that, Judea, which is Israel. And I can tie my roots all the way back there. And every single Jew, no matter where they are in the world, ties their roots back to Judea before the Romans came in and conquered it. And so there's a selective argument that's being made out there as to, who's the rightful heir of the land based on a certain period in time. And a lot of them start at 1900, right? It's a very convenient time to start.
1948 and 1946, the best way to go. Yeah, when in doubt.
Yeah, I mean, even in 1948 and 1946, you had a lot of Jews that were there. You go back to 1900 before there was an influx of them going back to decolonize the land that was taken away from us. It's a very convenient time, but why start there? Because that was not under the Arab rule. It was under the Ottomans' rule, right? So the Arabs never actually had the rightful heir to the land. Now, that's kind of the, if you wanted to take the hard and true, like cold facts of what's happening on the ground. If you want to acknowledge humanity and kind of look at it and say, look, the reality is it may be ours, but there were Arabs that came into that land over the years and we have to find a way to coexist. Well, there's a conversation we can have there, right? And it's a conversation that we should have. And there's this alternate force that's being put at hand that's wanting to put the Israelis and the Arabs at odds with each other, right? And there are people that are benefiting from the war and the constant struggle that Israelis and Arabs are facing on the ground day in and day out. But the reality is, if you actually cared about the Palestinian people, and this is what I tell people all the time, if you really and truly cared about Palestinians, you should be advocating full stop every single thing Israel is doing, because the only way that the Palestinian people get liberated is with the complete eradication of Hamas physically and ideologically. And then and only then will the Palestinian people stop associating their pain and their suffering through Israel and realize that their pain and suffering is caused by these external forces, i.e. Iran, that are basically treating them as pawns in this chessboard and sacrificing them just to further their own kind of narrative on the world stage.
To go on that logic, how does somebody with a rightful eye see when a humanitarian truck comes into Gaza with food and Gaza and Hamas shooting people so that they don't get the food and driving away so that they're starving so that Hamas does okay and the terrorists or the soldiers get fed, but not the people that live there and living there just to live and coexist. It just mesmerizes
how can they see something like that and still speak up against Israel?
Yeah.
They really can. I mean, what leg do they have at that point to stand on, right? You see these humanitarian trucks coming in, you see these Palestinians trying to get food, and you see Hamas shooting them dead because they want to procure all of it. By the way, you're also seeing whatever's being left over being sold, being sold on like kind of their secondary market, so to speak, and not even going to the end users. And
some of these things just blow my mind when I hear them. So
I heard the argument, obviously they don't have any validity, but, Israel is the reason that Hamas is in place now. They created it, generations of, orphans, and it's all Israel's fault. Hamas exists because of Israel, which, Hamas didn't have to exist. Gazans could have chosen peace. Gazans could have said enough is enough. Israel left their land completely, even taking the native Jews from the graves with them. So they had a choice, and this is the choice they made. But, the world doesn't want to see it that way because of either subconscious or conscious Jew hatred, essentially. A hatred for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the reality is the plight of the Palestinian people is the fault of one and only one group of people. And that's radical Islamists led by Hamas, ultimately led by Iran. And they're the reasons why the Arabs that are living on the ground are suffering. And yet they've managed to both reduce them to absolute nothing from like a quality of life standpoint, and at the same time insert this idea and this ideology in them that somehow Israel is at fault. But the reality is, all you have to do is start to peel that onion to realize where the problem actually lies. I mean, you have 4 Arabs that are the leaders of Hamas that are all in Qatar that are collectively worth $11 billion. And it's not because they're entrepreneurs and they had some successful startup that, you know, they sold and exited. That's our money. That's the US's money. That's the UK's money. That's Europe's money that all went into Gaza and the West Bank and Judea and Samaria to help the Palestinian people try to come out of the poverty that they're living in and have some sort of economic prosperity in their lives. And yet these criminals took and stole all the money from them, built this massive net worth for themselves, reinvested some of it into creating, 500 miles of tunnels underground by which they fostered terrorism, and yet their people got nothing. And so if you advocate on behalf of the plight of the Palestinian people, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. But put that frustration and that anger in the right place. It's not Israel's responsibility to take care for a neighboring nation. It's their own government's responsibility to care for them. And instead of caring for them and providing them with the lifestyle and the means by which to generate some sort of economic prosperity and quality of life, similar to what Israel's managed to do in the last 76 years, they treat them like garbage, and then they indoctrinate them to believe that Israel's at fault. And it's a problem in Gaza, and it's a problem in Judea and Samaria too. I mean, Mahmoud Abbas is a billionaire as well. What has he done to be worth $1 billion? Yasser Arafat's daughter is a billionaire, who, by the way, still categorized as a refugee.
Yeah, although she owns like a block in London.
Yeah, I remember when I was in Israel in the 90s, and I went to meet with USAID at the State Department in Tel Aviv, and I'm asking them, what are they doing? Right? Where's the money going? And they basically said it was going toward water filtration projects throughout the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And I was like, I just drove through that in a bus. I didn't see any water.
As Israel is giving them water. As Israel is giving them water.
My village, when they trench for water, I know when my village is trenching for water. It's obvious, right? When you're trenching for something else, it's something different. And they were not at all trenching for water pipelines whatsoever.
When Israel left Gaza in 2005, they left behind enough greenhouses for self-sustainability in perpetuity. When they left Gaza, they left a watering facility that allowed for them to live off their own water. But what did Hamas do as the governing body of these Palestinian people that everybody is so fired up about? Instead of leveraging what Israel started and continuing that forward so that their people could rely on their own water sources, they let it sit, didn't maintain it, and in fact took all the piping that was built out for it, which a lot of Israelis were the ones that built it, private Israelis, entrepreneurs that did it, and they used it to fire the Katyusha rockets into Israel. And so you look at this and you say, if you feel bad for them because they're being dealt a bad card, I get that. But to not put the blame where it belongs and to instead blame Israel because Israel is prospering, because they are reinvesting in their community, because they are creating a society by which people can flourish, that's not on us. So stop putting the attention on us. Leave us alone. That's all we want. Just leave us alone. We don't want nothing to do with Gaza. And even though we took over, even though we won rightfully and legitimately both Gaza and Judea and Samaria in 1967, and it's technically Israeli land, so arguably the Palestinians are occupying Israeli land, in an effort to have peace and quiet, stay there, have it, and do your own thing, but just let us be and leave us alone.
When I went to Israel, and I wrote papers about this back in the day, about the water thing that they did in Israel, because it's sustainability. It's like, I went to Kenetra, the views of Kenetra and the Golan with the wind turbines. I went into, Tel Aviv and Ben, all the universities, what did they have? Not just solar thermal, but they had parabolic, so it followed the sun all day long. I mean, this is in the 90s. Israel was well before the United States and the world when it comes to green technology, and that's what made me. That's what made me the green living guy. Going to Israel and seeing how this can be done, and can be done with universities, with the people in the right places, and to do it because it makes sense. I mean, walking around and just seeing solar thermal everywhere back in the day, and that was in the 90s. Now we're talking solar photovoltaic, but then it was just to handle the hot water heater. Man, we've been so far ahead, and I've just been trying to preach that. And also, like with electric cars, and I'll leave with this too, land with this. Since the 90s, I've been trying to tell people electric cars are going to get us off of oil, people. And I'm just trying to get us off of OPEC on a daily basis. And that is the connection. That really is the interconnection that I'm trying to bring in my brand as Green Living Guy, and especially after October 7th. To show people that it was Israel doing this that made me the Green Living Guy, and that Israel has been at the forefront of this, in the forefront of water generating technology when nobody was. And greenhouses, sustainable greenhouses, we left them with food for life, and they destroyed it. So I'm all for it.
Seth, I think, and Mikey, I think it's, one of the unfortunate things about this war is that Israel has been on hold, and they're fighting on multiple fronts, to keep their economy alive, their tech industry alive, their farming community alive, and themselves alive. And just, it's been so disruptive to life, to the world, really. I mean, everyone is really affected. So, one thing I was wondering is, what is it that Israel needs most right now from the international community, aside from vocal support and education and all that, which will take some time? Right. But like, practically speaking, what does the, Friends of the IDF, what do they need? What does the IDF need? What does the government need?
Yeah, and how can we help? And how can we help here? You and Hannah and I help. I mean, we're here to not just tell the audience here how they can help, but how can we do our part too? So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of causes and efforts that require funds right now in Israel. And so I would tell people, whatever it is that you want to support, whether it's orphan families, whether it's, handling displaced families that have had to leave the north or the south and have relocated or are living in hotels and need assistance, buying food and just living day to day, whether it's supporting the IDF through the organization that I'm a part of, the Friends of the IDF. I mean, the Friends of the IDF, the generals in Israel are telling us on the humanitarian side and the support that we give them, they're going to need assistance to the tune of about $150 million, for the duration of the war. And that number continues to grow as the war expectations continue to extend. So the Friends of the IDF can constantly need additional supporting capital. I tell people, and lastly, before I kind of talk about how they do it, the Israeli Civic Action Network, that's the war that's not being fought in Israel, but it's being fought here, right? That's the war that we're fighting with the local government to fight against all the to fight against the BDS legislation efforts, to fight against the city councils that are trying to pass resolutions against Israel, to get school districts across the country to not only stop driving curriculum that's against Israel, but to reintroduce Holocaust education, to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism so that Jewish students that are attacked for being Jewish as a religion or as an ethnicity or as an cultural identity associated to Israel is all considered at the same level of severity. Like, we have so much work to do, not just in Israel, but here to further the Jewish cause. So, ICANN is an amazing organization to support. The FIDF is an amazing organization to support. I've supported Zaka, which is arguably one of the hardest jobs I imagine anybody can do in Israel, dealing with the bodies that were left over from the slaughter that took place on October 7th and the mental stress and trauma that these volunteers have had to deal with. It's absolutely awful. So people that are here in the US, how do you help? It's actually a lot easier than you think. Find the organization like an FIDF or an ICANN that you want to rally behind and host an event at your home. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to do the 300-400 person galas. Some of the most impactful events, like the one I went to last night, it was 20 people. They put out tea and coffee and some cookies, so it's not like it was a big cost for them. And they brought out a speaker that would come and talk about a cause. And the event raised, 30, 40, 100. I mean, I've been to some of these 20-person kind of parlor meetings that they may call it that raises $1 million. I mean, you'd be shocked as to how much people are willing to give when they can identify behind a cause that they rally against. So if you're somebody who wants to take action, find the cause, like I said, that's out there, because there's no shortage of them. Host a small thing, 10 people at your house, and you'd be astonished at how much support you can actually rally just by doing these little small events.
Okay, that's food for thought. Thank you for that. Thank you. I hope that this as well can help generate something for you. We will put all the links, of course, into the description that will stream out to all the platforms for this as well. So we'll get all the links out for you that you need, Mickey. No problem.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. When the war started, I mean, I was so deeply affected. I couldn't sleep or move or do anything for about a week. But I organized a little pledge with family and friends to donate a set amount each month to Friends of the IDF until the war ends. So I've been doing that.
Amazing.
And so as my circle of my social circle, and not just this organization, but Zaka and several other organizations I've donated to, Taki Israel as well.
Taki Israel,
yeah.
They're amazing too.
Yeah, and one idea I had, and Jews are full of ideas. Everyone, we have a lot of creativity, but one idea I had was to draft a letter and to send it within the legal community, since I'm a lawyer. So there's been a huge response just from that, and people forward, and even plaintiffs' counsel to defense counsel, because this is a bipartisan issue for Jews. Jews are always arguing and always divided, but now is the time to put all of that aside and really focus on our survival.
Yeah.
Right.
Look, the reality is October 7th was by far the greatest atrocity that ever faced the state of Israel, that arguably could be the greatest atrocity against the Jewish people in modern history, obviously excluding the Shoah. And it's forced Jews across the world that had no affiliation to Israel, didn't really consider themselves connected to the land in any way, shape, or form, to really come together in a beautiful way. And it's amazing to think that in light of an attack that was designed to break us down, the only thing that Hamas achieved long term was strengthening Am Yisrael. And I have had people messaging me on Instagram that have told me I'm a Jewish person by name only. I was never connected. I was anti-Israel in their policies for a very long time. I can't believe what's happening. My eyes have been completely open. I have lost all of my friends for posting that I'm praying for the people in Israel. I mean, people have really been awakened by the realities of this world, and the Jewish people have more of a need, arguably more than ever, to come together and to do something. And so there's so many people. I mean, we're 15 million, but we're really 6 or 7 million that are kind of involved and active in some way, shape, or form. Just doubling that effort in and of itself would have monumental effect for the state of Israel. And the reality is here, Israel didn't happen because of the Holocaust. The Holocaust happened because we didn't have Israel. And if any Jewish person across this earth thinks that the state of Israel isn't critically important to the survival of us as a people, just look at our history and know that what happened on October 7th was just the first in many attempts that they will continue to make to eradicate us. And you don't have to hear it from me, you can hear it from them. And so we have to come together and we have to accept and acknowledge that this cancer of radical Islamism that exists in Gaza through Iran has to be eradicated, and Israel has to do what it has to do in order to protect itself and to protect Jewry around the world.
Regarding the Jewry around the world, then, my only question that has come up lately is, what about all of this money that has been pumped into the universities? And now we've seen it on its ugly head with Columbia and Cornell and this and that. So what are we going to do about that going forward? Because that is a huge cancer in itself.
Yeah. It's funny because I did a post recently on Instagram, and I think I started off the post by like, you've been played. You've absolutely been played, because you're being told something, and if you actually look beyond the headline, you'll realize all the lies that are behind it. For example, everybody makes an uproar about AIPAC, right? And AIPAC, since its inception, has been funded to the tune of only $80 million. It's a lot of money, right? $80 million is not change. It's by far a significant amount of money.
Yeah, it's not chump change. Yeah.
So how can you have so much animosity and anger towards the lobbying efforts of $80 million, and yet our schools have been funded to the tune of over $4 billion, almost 4,000% more than what AIPAC has, and you don't raise an eyebrow about that?
They don't care. Again, this is what it stems to, like what Hannah was saying, and I'm really upset about this, is that this perpetuation of anti-Semitism. It's like that joke, there's this comedian that said, they said back after World War II, never again. Well, now it's happened again. So it's not really never again. It's never again, then never again. So when is it going to be never again? And it's not.
Well, I was always a moderate politically, and my family, being from the former Soviet Union, are hardcore Republicans, having survived communism. And now I'm like more Republican than they are, like overnight, it seems. And I really believe that it will be the U.S. Republicans that turn the tide, that stop the funding, that start, holding our universities accountable, that are going to speak out, publicly on the news and change the education system, because they try to destroy us from within in the U.S. They can't bomb the U.S. So they're doing a whole other set of subversive things. And
the Nation of Islam, not just the Nation of Islam, but what is it?
China, Russia, Iran.
The Muslim Brotherhood. And now we got China. No, I'm kidding. Now we got China. I mean, literally, like everything that we thought couldn't happen is happening. I mean, what am I going to do on Christmas Eve now? I can't go for Chinese. Seriously.
Well, don't you don't have to punish the American Chinese people. They're not their government, right? I'm sure they don't like them either. But it's scary, like where we are. We're like in a very delicate.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is the Chinese didn't say what they said. They're not saying what they're saying because they believe in its truth. They're saying what they're saying because they have an interest on the world geopolitical stage, right? And they're just playing to what they think. They're playing a hand that they think is going to yield the greatest result for them. And that's ultimately like what their play comes down to. On the college campuses, though, I don't know how you get around some sort of a political effort to create an environment where foreign aid into our school systems is no longer going to be allowed, because that's just the reality. Foreign money coming in is not because, they desire to create additional value in the world in some way, shape, or form. They have an agenda, and their agenda is to further their message and to infiltrate it into our youth. And we've seen it happen for the last 20 plus years now, if not longer. And it really came to a head with October 7th. And I think a lot of people have really, really, really woken up as a result of this. And I know people that have pulled their kids out of school. They've moved their kids from one school to the other, to the schools that don't have this indoctrination campaigns going on, that aren't recipients of massive foreign aid. But you can't expect $4 billion to come into our system and not realize that that money has strings attached, and that it's going to cause the school to teach. And it's just such a shame, because we're robbing our children. We're robbing our children of the very, very specific design of what college was meant for, right? It was meant to teach children how to think critically, how to go beyond the surface, how to analyze information, how to be able to deduce, a conclusion based on a set of facts. But it's not what's happening now. We're feeding them the information. We're not teaching them how to think. We're teaching them what to think. And
we're TikToking them. We're TikToking them. We're infiltrating them with information that's incorrect. And that's the first thing that happens, as you know, Mickey. I mean, let's just be real about this for 1 second. We are at war, okay? And what's the first thing you do in war? You
launch a misinformation campaign.
Right. You create a massive disinformation campaign to the point where first it's now hate the Jews. Okay? Hate the Jews, what? And then it creates this whole thing. And there has been also this massive, and I'm sorry to say it, but this massive migration that goes into, now it's in London. And London, UK, who self-creates Israel. It's like, and then like, as that comedian said, we go to court, and who's the one that appeals for us? Germany. It's like we're living in the Twilight Zone here. Like, literally in the Twilight Zone. Germany is saying, no, this is wrong. But Britain is allowing it, and the prince is just keeping his mouth shut while the king has got cancer. I mean, it's literally worse than anything I can ever see. And the best I can say to everybody here is, which is really true, and I'll every small act that we do as a Jew does matter. And I'll point it out this way. My kids go to college. My kid goes to the University of Albany, so that's New York. I tell him to wear his Star of David out. Out. Don't be afraid. Wear it out. And you know what? My vice president of student affairs at the university wrote through the Hillel database, right? They got all the Hillel names and the Chabad names. And they sent out an email to all those parents, and they said, we're pleased to let you know that for Jews at the University at Albany, they're stressed and concerned because of Israel, but it's not because it's being thrown at them on campus. So the hatred is not out there, like in their face, like my other son who has experienced it in Buffalo, who's experienced it, and he keeps it out, and it's hard. So every act we do matters. Me, when I wrote letters to the governor, when I wrote letters about not just Cornell, but about to SUNY Binghamton, which is now being co-opted by this massive hatred that's going on. Kids, women being spit on going to class. Spit on because they're Jewish. Afraid to wear their stuff. So this has to stop. And anything that we could do with the IDF to help foster that, meaning what the information that the IDF is constantly bringing out. You're constantly hearing the IDF reporting stuff on a daily basis. So to get that information and to accurately report what's real out there, I think is a way that kind of I can help too in knowing what the IDF is saying, what the friends of the IDF are saying, and help you to get out the real information. And it's not that we're trying to get out a narrative. It's just that Hamas and UNRWA have been lying 7 days till Sunday, twice on Saturday for us, and then and IDF is telling the truth. It's just reality. So we need to work together to do that. And I'm grateful that you're here to foster that line of communication between literally as your board member of the IDF, your community that you're involved with in California, and now bringing it here. So it's important.
Yeah, I agree. And look, trust me, I see it, right? It's, it's 15 million Jews and it's a billion to, Muslims in the world. Thankfully, most of which are peaceful, and, 25 or whatever percent of them are radicalized, which is a big number as well. And we're outnumbered. And the college campuses, we're outnumbered. And you see mobs of people walking the street. You see hundreds of thousands of people walking on the bridges in London, and that's a scary sight to see. And so you're outnumbered on the advocacy side, and you're outnumbered on the college campuses. And I'm on social media as you are, and we're vastly outnumbered on social media. And it's very easy to look at it and say, oh my gosh, all the cards are stacked up against us. But they've been that way for many times in our history. We should not be here today. Right? The Jewish people should have been extinct a long time ago, multiple times over. And so,
but it was Hashem, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to that end, it's, don't be discouraged by what you're seeing. And most importantly, do not allow yourself to be silenced by what's going on. Because we know what happens when we see this misinformation campaign going on and all the anti-Israel and anti-Jew hatred happening. We know what happens if we stay silent. It doesn't blow over on its own. It doesn't just stop, because their intent is to eradicate us. So even though we're outnumbered, and even though it seems like the odds are against us and we're the underdog in this fight, keep speaking up and speaking the truth, because they're going to keep spreading lies. And we're going to keep spreading the truth, and eventually the truth will prevail. And I'm not saying that as like a catchphrase. I'm saying that because I truly and honestly believe it in my heart of hearts.
Well, as a friend of mine who's from California also said, and I love this line too. She said to me, and she's not Jewish, she's Mexican, but so much in favor of Israel and Jews and everything like that. And she said, you have to realize that truth is the highest frequency. So when you're speaking truth, you're speaking the best out there. And negativity and hatred only goes for so long until people want it to stop. So the truth will inevitably be on our side. And we do have to be faithful. I mean, Israel, what was it? One of the original leaders said one of the ingredients to Israel is hope. So we have to believe in that. And one thing that blew my mind away too, Mickey, and I'll just land with this, is that I was in a chat group with a bunch of people on Clubhouse, and then go into a room and the guy is like lauding and praising me. And I thought it was for, he was going to joke around and say my numbers, my stats on Instagram. No. He said because I was standing up for those that won't speak up for themselves. Blew my mind away.
Yeah, Seth, I think, and Mikey, I think that one takeaway is that Jews do punch above our weight class, so we might be outnumbered, but what we do and what we have to say is, exponential. It's tremendous. So it travels far and wide. And if you think about light and darkness, you can have a whole lot of darkness, but if you have one ray of light, you're focused on that. And that's what illuminates the rest of it. So it's not about numbers. It's about truth. It's about the message. It's about intent. And one other thing is that we do have allies. They might be a little silent, but when push comes to shove, that's all I hear about. They're quieter. They might do one post a month or a week or say something here and there, but they want Israel to prevail because they want Western ideology, Judeo-Christian ideology to prevail at the end of the day. And one other thing I noticed is that Muslim people or former Muslims, whatever their beliefs are now, who are Zionists, who are on the side of Israel, are more aggressive than a lot of Jews. They are very intolerant, and they say things like, just kill them all. And I'm like, wait, no, well, we can't. You know, they're very like vocal and angry at radical Islam and what they've done to their people in Iran or, Pakistan, wherever. It's from all over the world that I get these singular messages, but they are out there. So I think that's very interesting that, with all the hate the Jews have received, they never respond back with that hate. They could have, but they never did. They're always trying to make peace, be reasonable, and they really are for life and equality and liberty for everyone, not just themselves.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, how many times has Israel extended a hand at peace or accepted a peace deal that was rejected by the Arab leadership? Right? It's happened 6 times. When Egypt wanted peace,
to say 6 or 7 times. Yeah.
When Jordan wanted peace, we made peace. Think about the Abraham Accords that developed over the last few years, right? It's the concept that Israel is somehow out, to take over the world. It's such an insane and asinine claim, and the world is believing it now because they're seeing this skewed propaganda in the media, and they're thinking, oh well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, you connect those dots and the story checks out. Peel the onion, go past the headline. And once you actually go in there, you're seeing that you're being played to be a fool by this system that's designed to create more infighting amongst all of us.
Yeah, divide and conquer is the easiest strategy in the world.
Yeah, but like these people, these Muslims that you're saying, like, just kill them all. Like, I will say one thing that they understand is they understand that the mindset of the people in the leadership in the Middle East is not the same as it is in the Western world, right? We believe in diplomacy, we believe in dialogue, and Israel believes in that too. That's not the case in the Middle East. What they fear is strength, and the fear of retaliation is really what brings them to the table to ultimately talk. And so all the years that Israel has been trying to seek a diplomatic resolution through the help of the United States or, its European allies or whatever the case may be, you have one partner in peace. So Seth, let's say you and I sat across the table from each other, right? I'm looking at you and I'm saying, Seth, how do we find some way to kind of come together where I concede a little bit, you concede a little bit, but ultimately we do what's necessary for the sake of our children so that our children can grow up together. And then you look at me and you say, nope, I'm going to kill you.
No, right. That's what Yasser Arafat's favorite game.
Yeah.
Go to the pomp and circumstance, go to Camp David, go to all the stuff, get all the food, get as much money as possible. But when there's a deal, no thanks.
Yeah, and so my hope is that, Israel does what it needs to do in this war. Hamas physically gets eradicated, and then they begin the rebuild process to help shift the trauma that the Arabs in Gaza have felt for the years, to get them to understand that the cause of that wasn't Israel, but it was in fact this radical Islamist leadership that benefited from the plight that they experienced, and to shift that focus onto them and to see that Israel is a partner in peace. And hopefully, our children can grow up there alongside the Arab kids and prosper. I mean, that's one isn't going to eradicate the other one. The Arabs aren't going to go anywhere, and the Jews aren't going to go anywhere, right? So really, the only solution that we have is to find some sort of peace. You can't have it when you have a party at the table who wants to eradicate you. So that has to be solved first, and then we can move on to find some sort of a diplomatic solution for the benefit of everybody.
I know you brought it up before, and I'll land with this last question too. You mentioned education, and I know now in Saudi Arabia or other countries, they're starting to create a more appropriate education system that isn't telling them to kill and hate us every 15 seconds. So how should I say this? How important is how much is the IDF helping in that education process, and how can we then help you to help the IDF to continue that process?
Yeah, so it's funny. I heard, these are personal stories. This isn't like, a public statement on behalf of the IDF or the Israeli government. These are just stories I've heard from soldiers that, they're going into these homes in Gaza, and they're telling me every single home either has weapons in it, it has books and literature on how Israel is to blame for everything that they've got going on, and they have literature praising Hamas. And you think like this is an indoctrination that has been taking place since we left Gaza in 2005. And so you have all these, teenagers, all they learned growing up was that Israel was to blame for everything, that they know nothing else. They have no basis of, contradictory knowledge. They're not given multiple sides of a story to deduce their own conclusion. They're given the conclusion. And so what Israel and the IDF, and this is just my opinion here, speaking as Mikey, what Israel and the IDF needs to do is once the physical war is over and the rebuild effort takes place, the education is going to be critical, right? And this is going to be the 20 years outlook on the situation where they're going to have to introduce real history to those kids so that not necessarily, the adults of today, but the 2 and 3 and the 4-year-olds of today are going to grow up with the reality of history and the events that actually took place. And the events that took place will be both the Palestinian suffering as well as the Jewish suffering, because both people have suffered. And I think it's okay to say that. But the real education, and not just this one-sided propaganda that they've been given. And I think if Israel plays the long game on this one, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take money, and it's going to take withstanding outside pressure to do it.
Yes.
Because the international world is going to pressure Israel to leave Gaza as fast as they can, and they cannot do that, in my opinion. But if Israel sustains the pressure and they stay in there for the next 20 to 25 years to ensure that they rebuild and create an economic opportunity for the adults that are living in Gaza, and create an education system built on hope and prosperity, not and UNRWA. Not UNRWA, exactly, the anti-UNRWA curriculum, then I think 20 years from now you will see a very different Middle East. Because here's the reality: I don't think many people thought that after what happened in the Holocaust in the 40s, Germany today would be so supportive of Israel. I think you can see the relationship between the Arabs and the Israelis in Israel, that hate die down significantly faster, and an acceptance of one another take place materially faster than even what we saw with Germany.
Yeah. Look at the Bedouins.
Look at the Bedouins, look at the Druze, look at the Muslims living in Israel. Look at Yosef Haddad. I don't know if you follow Yosef Haddad, but he's an Arab Israeli. Yeah. He's so staunchly Israel because he understands that the Arabs are given a very unfortunate hand in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, and the 2.1 million Arabs living in Israel have the best quality of life of arguably any Arabs in the Middle East. Think about what the Syrians are living through in Syria, and the Lebanese are living through in Lebanon, and the Libyans in Libya. In a territory where it's, really, really like below level standard type of living, you have this little nation that's given 2.1 million Arabs such an unbelievable quality of life that has the ability to really shift the Middle East as a whole the moment the Palestinians and the Israelis come together. And that can only happen after Hamas is eradicated from the equation.
What about Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, that is arguably, I think I saw something earlier today that the fighting is accelerated up in the north. Same scenario, right? It's Iran has you really just think about it like as a chess game, right? Like they're strategically placing their rooks and their bishops in positions to prepare to attack. And that's really what they've done. They've infiltrated Gaza with Hamas, and they've infiltrated Lebanon. Lebanon, my mom, who again, my family has told generations in Israel. My mom lives in Israel. She tells me, like, as a little girl, she used to go to Lebanon, and she's like, Mikey, it was the most beautiful country. It was stunning, and it was friendly, and the food was amazing, and the architecture was unbelievable. And they've had a hostile takeover by radical Islam. And so Hezbollah is going to have to get dealt with. And they seem to think that they have the ability to take Israel down. They're so sorely mistaken you kind of misjudge and miscalculate Israel's strength time and time again, and time again, we persevere through it. And the worst part of it is we're going to have to lose hundreds of soldiers along the way. And it breaks my heart that that's going to be the case to see, because I get an alert every time a soldier falls. It's devastating. It's devastating beyond words. Like when one soldier would fall here and there, and I'm talking about long before October 7th, you would really dwell on it and feel the pain, because that was like my brother, that died. And now with the amount that are coming in every single day, it's so traumatizing and it's so impactful that these are people I'll never forget. When I go to Israel, I will walk up to soldiers and hug them. And I know I'm not the only one that does that, because there's a bond. Yeah, there's a bond that's there that is not as understandable to people outside of Israel, but like the Jewish world, Am Yisrael is so powerful and it's so united and so strong. It's one of the reasons that we're disliked too, in my opinion. But Israel's might is unbelievable. Hezbollah would be very smart to disengage from what they're trying to potentially do. It won't bode well for them. And unfortunately, more civilians will likely die because of the fighting. And just like in Gaza, with every civilian death being Hamas's fault, because they would have all been alive if it wasn't for what Hamas did on October 7th, every civilian in Lebanon's life is right now in the hands of Hezbollah, and they should calm themselves down and not accelerate an effort to try to attack Israel, because they will get taken down and too many civilians will unnecessarily die as a result.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and I'll leave with this, but I just remember, and I've always been like a futurist in my career. And, I go to meet USAID, and I'm there on the Israeli army base, and we're talking, and everybody's going, saying goodbye and everything like that, and thanking everybody. And I broke into tears saying, I'm more sad, not that I'm leaving, but I'm more sad because of the fight that these people are inevitably going to have to take. And I pray for their safety, their health, and their ability to win. And people were just stunned. They're like, what are you talking about? We're living in peace. And I'm like, nah, dude, nah. I'm like, I see USAID doing water construction projects, and I'm not seeing water construction. I'm like, something is wrong. And
I'll tell you this. I talked about the strength of Am Yisrael. I cannot tell you how high the morale is amongst the IDF soldiers. From the ones that I've talked to, they are motivated. They understand just what the degree to the existential threat that exists against the state of Israel, and the pride that they have to now have to go out and to protect the nation and to protect Jews around the world. I have never seen this degree. I mean, you have soldiers that are wearing tzitziot and kippahs that have no connection to the religion, and their roots, the roots of their Judaism are deepening so far because of what happened that, I say it again, they made such a mistake. They took a nation that was, on the brink of one with its great divides civilly with all the judicial reform that was happening of Israel, and they completely eliminated it, and they brought everybody together. And it will be looked upon, in my opinion, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, it will be looked upon as one of the gravest mistakes made on behalf of a radical Islamist movement to infiltrate on October 7th what they did in Israel, because the ramifications by which it's gonna destroy all of their intent.
But don't you think it's because they think because we're small, they're billions, that the numbers were just going to beat the pants off of us, but they don't realize our inner strength and our strength as a country. I think they really lack the understanding.
The Romans tried to do it. The Egyptians tried to do it. The Germans tried to do it. How many times were we vastly outnumbered, and how many times have we managed to persevere and succeed? The outcome on this will be no different, in my opinion. I have all the faith in the world that is exactly how this thing will play out. And again, I know it's easy to look at the numbers and say like, oh my gosh, like this is our end. It's not our end. We are supernatural in this way. Jews have proven to be supernatural time and time again. And we will overcome this, and we will actually, and here's the big part, we will continue to make positive contributions to this world the way that Israel and the Jewish people have done for thousands of years in areas of medicine and tech and green living, and transition to like the EV world. I mean, I don't. I'm sure you know about this. The Israeli technology where they're creating roads that will charge your car as you're driving.
Yeah. It's I remember learning about it in '99. They were talking about in Albany, right? When I was working for NYSERDA, about a demonstration concept of going from Saratoga Springs to Albany, because that's like the commuters, right? They go north. So they wanted to create a lane of just being able to charge perpetually as you're driving. And now it's in other countries. It's a no-brainer, and it's what I love about it. And I've been saying to all my other green electric vehicle enthusiasts across the country, when they start saying, I'm like, and it's Israeli tech. It's ours, baby.
And that's the reality. Not only are we're going to persevere, we will continue making massive contributions to society on multiple fronts. And a lot of the successes that we will face as humanity will come from the Jewish people. And that's not a statement of arrogance. It's a statement of reality.
It is reality. There's so many people that I remember when I worked for the state and I left the state, and I would advocate for electric vehicles, and I would go back to my agencies and they would go, "Are you crazy? Hear what they say. Natural gas vehicles are going to take off." And I look at them like this. And in the back of my cranium, I'm like, you have absolutely no clue what is coming down the pike. It's obvious. We lead, they learn and take notes.
Seth, Mikey, I think, from what I gather, the war will be long. Hezbollah isn't going anywhere. And for the Jewish people to prevail, we have to keep the support going. And, once Gaza ends, it's not the end of things. There's a long road ahead. Hezbollah is stronger, more organized, more manpower, more rockets, more missiles, more sophisticated.
Lots of rockets.
We have to. I feel like we have to have all hands on deck and continued effort to support the IDF and Israel in every way that we can. So thank you, Mikey, for your time and your knowledge and eloquence. I mean, we've heard it so many times, but it's always refreshing to hear it again, right?
Not just from us, but to hear it from somebody heavily involved as you are. Somebody that's really knee deep in it, that understands. It's a beautiful thing. And for you to even appreciate the understanding that I come from, me as the Green Living guy, appreciating where I got my roots from, and that I just want to support that. Like, I used to hug IDF soldiers all the time. I would go there and I'd just be like, God, I feel so... like, it's just like this, as you know, Mickey, it's this experience you can't wrap your head, that most people can't wrap their head around. And to have it nowadays, to meet you, I never would have met you had this not happened. Let's be real. I mean, there's just so many great people that I've met and have networked with. I have a co-host now just because of October 7th and the Jewish people coming together. So I want to bless you, Mickey. I want to say Baruch Hashem for what you're doing, and to continue your strength and solidarity with what you're doing for the IDF, and that you stay around as long as possible. Hopefully we can have you again on the show to see how well we're doing. But we're with you. We love you. And everybody check out Mickey. We will have all the links on the description. I follow him, so if you go to my Instagram, you'll see him. But folks, one small step at a time. Today's is Mikey Micholav. You got to go check him out. And he just talks truth, talks the highest frequency all the time, which means that he's of light, shining of light and bringing light to people. So that's a beautiful thing. And, it's people like us that are going to make the world a better place. I really, after more and more time after October 7th and meeting people like us, it's that I realize that it's us that are going to make the world a better place. So thank you, and God bless you for what you do. Really. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you guys too. And
Thank you.
may Hashem bring back our soldiers and protect our hostages and bring them home as well.
Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you, Mikey.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.
Fun, and as I always say at the end of my shows,